Welcome to the Filmmakers Life podcast. This is Joanne Butcher. I'm a business coach specializing in fundraising for filmmakers. And if you are looking for money for your film, you have come to the right place. Because that's what we talk about a lot, is money and the business side of filmmaking. And I find that a lot of times filmmakers are in the dark, not because of their own fault, but because it's very difficult to get basic information about the business side of filmmaking. And today I am super excited because I get to hang out on the podcast with my favorite client. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that.
Encourage it.
One of my favorite clients, Anthony. I just suddenly forgot your last name, Anthony. That's crazy. Anthony Hand. That's right, Anthony Hand. And I every time I think of you now, I think of Maxxie LaWow.
It totally fits.
my first question, I'm very curious to hear how you're going to answer this, because it's not going to be the same as for a lot of my guests. My first question is, when did you know you were a filmmaker?
Oh, probably last week.
I thought you might say something like that. I know you're joking, but let's stick with the last week. What happened last week?
Well, 2 weeks ago, we had a screening at Cinema Diverse in Palm Springs. And so technically that was our world premiere for Maxxie. It was our final theatrical cut, and we'd done some sound updates, and we integrated the live symphony orchestra, the Symphony of Budapest. So it looked amazing, it sounded amazing, and I'm glad to say that everyone who was able to turn out for it really enjoyed the film. So I think at that moment I was like, oh, I'm not pretending anymore. People are starting to see this, you know. It reminds me of a long time ago when I was taking a group fitness class. My coach at that time, she called us athletes. And believe me, in my life, I've never identified as an athlete. You know, I've never done the sporty ball thing or whatever. But at the same time, like that was the year I think that I did a marathon on a rowing machine. So 26 point whatever miles on a rowing machine. And then I followed it up with riding my bicycle from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And I think at that point, I'm like, well, maybe I am starting to be a little bit more athletic. You know, maybe I will sort of take on that moniker. And I think in many ways, I feel like that with filmmaking in some way.
Did I know you did that? Did you know that we both did the AIDS ride?
Oh, you know, I think we talked about it like 3 years ago. So like passing.
Oh, I wonder if we were in the same year.
2013.
Oh, okay. So
I think you're before that, vaguely remember.
No, it was considerably later than that I did.
Okay.
But I can't remember exactly, but it was before COVID, but not that long before COVID. Maybe 2017, I think. Oh, I know. Doing the AIDS ride and riding from San Francisco to LA. Wow, what an experience that was. What an experience. Unforgettable, life-changing event. And I went to do it the next year, and I couldn't do it. I don't know what happened, but my body wouldn't do it. So that was the end of it.
It is tough, and filmmaking is tough, and it is in many ways a marathon too, isn't it? My goodness.
It is. And I think that filmmakers are prepared. Well, we're getting into the animation thing with you, but most filmmakers who are making live action, I think they're prepared for pre-production. They're possibly, even when they're working with me, even prepared for fundraising. They're prepared for production, but they're never prepared for post-production. That's what I see. They're never really prepared for post-production, and it always is a lot longer and harder than they expect. But I think we're going to come to that with your story. So, all right. So 2 weeks ago, you realized you were a filmmaker because you showed your film in front of an audience, and that's always a wonderful experience for filmmakers, as long as the film's good, which yours is. But what about before? What was it that made you even think I should give this a shot?
Well, the origins of Maxxie probably started in 2018 when I had just seen yet another big comic book, tentpole film. And the one I saw that year was actually amazing. Black Panther was actually really, really good. So good. But that being said, I was really just starting to think like, how come we never see any films with queer superheroes? Where the lead is a lesbian or a trans person or, any of other, family members in the queer world. And I started like kind of meditating, if you will, on what would a queer superhero look like. And of course, a queer superhero could be anybody, could be anything, could have any kind of power or something. But I was really coming back to I'm a huge fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. And, I was sort of kept coming back to how in RuPaul's Drag Race, as those queens are getting ready for the runway looks, that's the kind of moment when many of these queens will sort of share very personal stories about their trials and their hardships and their successes and the things they've overcome, but also about that kind of occasionally they'll also talk about that transformation from street person to their drag persona and how putting on the stockings, putting on the hip pads, doing the tuck, whatever the case is, putting on the whole costume, putting on the makeup, it's this 3-hour transformation. And by the end of it, they are a different person in many ways. They have their drag persona and they often talk about how in drag they feel stronger, they feel more empowered. They, even if they're introverted and shy in real life, when they're in their drag persona, they feel strong. They feel like they can talk to anybody, they can do anything, they can go up on that stage and perform. And I think that that's really amazing because that reveals that hidden strength that people often underestimate and don't realize that they have. And really, that's kind of the heart of the story of Maxxie LaWow, where Simon is a shy young barista, but through the power of this magic wig, he finds out that he is so much more than that, and he unleashes his inner super-shero. And that's kind of like, yeah, that was the heart of the story. And then I started thinking about like, what is the best medium for telling the story? And I started thinking about maybe like a picture book, maybe a graphic novel or a comic book. And then I was worried, probably erroneously at that time, that, for example, I was afraid that like comic books wouldn't be as wide of an audience. But mostly I was thinking, well, my mom's not going to read a comic book. I can barely get that girl to like look at my pictures on Facebook. And so I started thinking that like maybe a good way to reach a larger number of people beyond the comic book world might be through a film. And that's when I started taking that seriously and looking for inspiration of others who've taken properties and in an independent through those sort of independent DIY efforts, whatever turned out these really fun films or animated series, for example.
So is it still true today that there is no LGBT superhero?
Well, there have been a few appearances of queer superheroes in TV. Warner Brothers had one of the WB shows had a trans superhero, for example. On Netflix, there was an animated series called Super Drags from this small studio in Brazil. And it's a beautifully animated show. And otherwise, there have been random appearances of characters in comic books, for example, but not really significantly otherwise.
Right. I mean, I can really see why Black Panther would be such an inspiration,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
because I can't even follow Marvel movies, but I loved Black Panther. You
so
know,
good.
it was so good and it was so clear. I find their storytelling is so choppy. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But Black Panther, it was profound, and I can just see being inspired to do something with a queer superhero. This just came to my mind, but years ago when I used to run the Alliance Cinema on Lincoln Road in Miami Beach, in our early days, we showed many, many, many films by, it was really the earliest days of gay cinema. And I remember we showed Derek Jarman, who kind of, really came from the experimental world and then moved into a little bit mainstream before he died, Edward II. We were showing his last films, and then, a very, very young set of filmmakers who are now, very, very famous. But I was so taken by this cinema, and we talked about it a lot at the time, that this emerging voice that we had never heard before it was just so powerful. It was so powerful. And so I think that's what you're talking about. It's like, well, 20, 30 years after that, fine, there's a lot of queer characters all over the place. That's very standard, but we haven't seen it yet in the superhero realm. And yeah, that really makes me think about that. That's fantastic. I hadn't, and I hadn't ever heard you talk about the multi-hour transformation before. That's really interesting, and I got to witness that a few years ago. I was at Slam Dance with a documentary about a drag queen, and so in the apartment I got to see her starting from scratch, and I was like, I mean, I can barely put makeup on myself, so I just can't imagine 3 or 4 hours that it took her to do all that preparation, but the transformation into another being with, yes, completely different powers is amazing.
Yeah, truly amazing for sure.
So when you made that decision, okay, I'm going to make a film, what did you do next, given that this was completely new to you?
So it was during COVID,
Mhm.
early days of COVID. So you might remember the lockdown happened in March. And in October, I mean, I already had the story for Simon Shining Barista Finds Magic Wig, but I still didn't have the villain story. And then in April, I'd say, when I was cleaning my house and vacuuming with my pearls on, of course, um, that's when I had the idea for the villain, because any kind of protagonist without a villain or antagonist and drama, there's no story there, right? And that I'd been struggling on that one for a long, long time. And so for the villain story, the story I settled on was a character named Diabolical is also a drag queen, and she's discovered that drag queen tears have magical anti-aging properties. So she's been kidnapping queens and forcing them to watch the saddest movie ever made, which we cannot call Beaches, to drain them of their magical tears and launch a new cosmetics line. And now she's after Maxxie. So that's what I came up with, the villain's story. And the first thing I did was I asked a drag queen for help. Honest to God. So I am friends with a drag queen in San Francisco. She owns a nightclub and cabaret, and it's called Oasis. It is amazing. It is a special slice of heaven. And Darcy owns the club, and she's super well connected in the arts in San Francisco. I live just a little outside of San Francisco in San Jose. And I asked her,
What street is Oasis on?
Folsom and 11th.
Yes, I know exactly.
Yeah, in Soma. And so I asked her if she knew of any writers that could help me take my treatment, because I spent probably maybe a month writing a treatment for, which is the story arc from how it started to the kind of the major beats of the story, and some dialogue and everything. And I had written probably a 8 or 10 page treatment on that. So I asked her if she knew of any writers that could help me take that to a filmable script. And she turned me on to Michael Phillis, who is an occasional drag queen performer in San Francisco, but also an actor and director. And Michael is just one of these people who are multi-hyphenate, shockingly talented individuals. And so he spent a few months working on the script. And honestly, when the world shut down and Michael as a performer didn't have anything else going on, bless him for spending as much time as he did on the script, and he turned it out. It was so good. And so we spent probably, let's say, 3-ish months on that. And then I went back to Darcy and I said, Darcy, um,
Now what?
Michael's script is amazing. And do you know of any graphic designers who can do character designs, not only of characters, but especially drag queen characters? Because there's a slightly different approach to drawing drag queens, because they're basically men in, the male silhouette in kind of a female clothing kind of silhouette. And then it also has to be a little bit more over the top and everything, of course, too. And so Darcy turned me on to Johnny Burgess. And so we spent like 6 months through like the darkest time in COVID, working on different character designs and eventually settling on the look for Simon, the look for Maxxie, and the look for Dinah, and then also a character named Jay, who is Simon's best friend and kind of, co-adventurer in the film. So that was like that very first year was going through all of that process, in where most of my friends were learning how to make sourdough bread, painting, drinking
Coloring,
more.
that was my COVID skill, coloring books.
Yeah, adult coloring books. Yes. So that's how I got started on the journey. And by the end of that first year, between having a really solid script and really solid characters, in spring of 2021, that's when I kind of did like a little sit down with myself and said, this is really good. Do I want to keep pursuing this and find a way to get it produced, or am I just going to sit on this and never begin this adventure, never begin this journey? And will I have regrets? Will I be in my deathbed if I don't do this? Will I be in my deathbed someday and say, gosh dang it, I wish I'd made that movie? And I realized that, yeah, I would have lived and regretted not doing this. And so that's why I decided to go on this. And then I started from there making additional connections. My local filmmaker friend, Mark Schwab, for example, turned me on to you. And, going through that 3-month program with you, honestly, gave me the confidence also to keep pursuing this. So it was a very pivotal time for sure.
When I met you, it was very clear to me that you were going to be able to complete this process. I mean, I guess I feel that with all my clients, otherwise I wouldn't work with them. But I feel as though your experience and I'm going to probably say the wrong thing, but like as a product manager, is that correct?
Product designer, but product management is kind of part of the skills.
Yeah. I felt as though, those skills are absolutely transferable.
Oh, totally.
And that being a film producer requires exactly the same skills. Do you feel as though you have been able to use those skills in order to get your film made?
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, part of what I've been doing is, pulling together a team. And for each time I needed additional talent in this project, for example, when I needed songwriters, or when I, even finding my script writing collaborator, I had to do that assessment of, is this the right fit for this project? Are they going to get it? It's about a drag queen. It needs to be campy. Do they have skills? And I am going to say that I've been extremely blessed, because the people that I have worked with throughout this process, it takes a village to make a movie, for sure. And each person has really come at this project, lending us their talents, but also bringing so much more, and I've worked very hard to page person fairly as well. But even on my small budget, people have just been so enthusiastic and bringing so much more than I could have even asked. It's been such a blessing.
Yes, and that's actually one of the things that I don't, not in your case, but I find a lot of my clients don't really realize that. They're so sort of focused on, oh, well, I'm going to be paying people less than their real day rate. And I'm like, no. Those are not the people you want. The people you want are the people who are going to jump over fiery logs to come and work on your film at whatever it is that you're paying them, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And so the first fundraising you did was the crowdfunding campaign, is that correct?
That's right. So in the summer of 2021, while I was engaging with you, I was also working with a small overseas company to do like a 2-minute animated, I called it an adventure reel. Originally, I was calling it a sizzle reel or something like that, but or trailer, but the film hadn't been done yet, so it was all speculative design and everything. But that little 2-minute adventure reel told some of the story of what we're looking for with Maxxie. And then I also had it include some scenes that could potentially be in a future series. Like we see a man turning into a unicorn. We see a couple of women who are very burly women on motorbikes turning into pixies, things like that in there. That's really fun. And I would love to see Maxxie turned into a series so we could sort of explore this world of Maxxie a lot more. But anyways, I really wanted to have that because I knew that when it came to the Indiegogo, I just know from experience of product development that people don't always make that leap from a textual description of something to some visual to kind of envision that, whether it's a website or in this case, an animated film, come to life. And so I needed to have that animated little adventure reel to help people envision what Maxxie could be. And thank God I did, because like $5,000 I spent on it. But we raised $52,000 at the end of the day. That ain't bad.
Amazing, amazing. What was your experience like working with that overseas animation team?
Um, I actually hired two, and I wanted to have them do a bake-off to see which one I liked better. The second one ran away with my money. Uh, but the
Oh,
first one followed through, so that's good. Yeah,
um,
yeah, sadly.
I'm sort of, maybe I'm making this up, but I thought that I remembered that you were having difficulty with the overseas team around the LGBT content. Is that right?
Um, for that
Make
one,
it
it was okay.
up.
Um, I did have some other adventures where there had been some issues. So, for example, later, um, I looked at someone on like a clubhouse in one of your clubhouse rooms had talked about this overseas social media engagement company that would do posts for you for like not a lot of money, honestly. And so I contacted them to see if I could get them to do some social media posts for Maxxie. And they actually turned me down because they didn't want to have an LGBTQ client,
Wow.
drag queen, superhero. They just didn't want to work on that kind of content. And I'm like, okay, then. Well, I'm glad we didn't move forward then.
Right. Glad we sussed that out immediately. So you raised the $52,000, which was unbelievable. And what I always hope when I always say I love it when my clients are willing to do a crowdfunding campaign, because I think that the momentum is really important. Did that happen for you? Do you feel as though the crowdfunding campaign gave you some momentum as you were moving forward looking for investors?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is like in the beginning when I started talking about it to my friends, I don't think they took me seriously. And that's fair because a lot of people talk and don't do. So, you
Most people
know,
talk and don't do. Most.
yes. But once I did the crowdfunding campaign, I think it became real to so many people. Like, oh, look, he's actually doing this. And it's real. And he made a little video. And all right, I will give some money. And, people were very, very generous. I think that, the average donation for many campaigns is like, what, $50 or whatever. I think my average donation was probably closer to 200 or 250. So it was awesome.
Do
And
you remember how many donors you needed to get that 52,000? Do you remember?
100.
100. That's extremely high. Yeah.
Yes. And I thought that we might need 1,000 donors, honestly. But my friends just honestly, they turned out friends and family turned out in really unexpected ways. And I think that's part of the journey of, creating a film or anything creative, is pulling the people around you and engaging them in that project in some way. They get to hear your story, they get to follow your journey and make a small donation, and you can keep them engaged because they're invested and they want to see you finish. And having that support and the expectation that you're going to finish is as important as anything else, honestly, to making sure you finish. Like if I didn't finish this project, I would have had a whole bunch of friends and family be like, "The hell's wrong with you?"
That's right. Although I'm sure that when you did that first crowdfunding campaign, I'm sure people didn't really understand the magnitude of what you were doing. You are my very
True.
first client to complete an animated feature. And I always say to people, filmmaking is really hard, but animation is on a completely other level. Plus, you had a musical.
Hmm.
It's so many levels of difficulty beyond the average level of difficulty.
Yeah.
So I always had faith in you, but I think that most people just wouldn't really have understood what the massive task was that you were taking on.
I
And
don't think I understood either, honestly.
no,
I had
that's okay.
inklings, but
That was okay. We didn't want you to know exactly.
I still would have done it, honestly.
You could have said, though, I'm going to make a short, and that would have been a huge task. But to make a feature film is a very different thing. And I say to everybody, it's the entry into the business, But I was
Yeah.
always to do it.
Well, having that money, and sort of building that community of people, once I had that through the Indiegogo campaign, actually, um, people, my friends just socially and my family, every time I saw them, they would always ask me how it's going. And then in last year in 2023, in March, around my birthday, I turned 54. I mean, you might think that I'm 29, but there is a drag queen downstairs. And
It's
so
make up with the tears that's working so well.
totally early formula. And so I threw a birthday party here in San Jose, and I made it an event. I got a banquet room at the Holiday Inn, and I made it free. Had a step and repeat. I had a couple of local drag queens perform the numbers. I asked the cast if they wouldn't mind doing a little 1-minute cameo style video. This is why I joined this project, and made it a whole thing. And let me tell you, because of that, 3 people that night came forward and said they wanted to invest. 2 of them actually did follow through, but another couple that were there actually just signed the investment contract last week. So it paid for itself. Oh, actually, there was a 4th person that came from that event too that also donated, like that committed like 2 months later. So I mean, it more than paid for itself. Amazing.
Wow, what a great idea to have a 54th birthday fundraiser.
We made
I
it
just
Studio
I just
54 themed, so it was very fun.
I got the pictures, but I thought it was fantastic, and I just had a client do a fundraiser based on Murray Warshawski's house parties, which he read from cover to cover, and he charged a fee.
Oh,
And yeah, I didn't get to correct that before it was too late, but it doesn't work. The way you
no.
did the fundraiser is the right way to do it. There's
Yeah, for
no
that
charge.
event, no
Yeah.
charge. I wasn't going to charge money for my friends to come to a big old party. And you know what? I did make it easy on Eventbrite. Eventbrite has an option where people can make donations. And I had several donation levels, like donate $25, donate 50, 100, 250, whatever. And let me tell you, everyone who came donated something so
Wow.
that the party itself paid for itself just through those donations. And I didn't have to twist anyone's arms or make them feel guilty about it. And then I'll still be, giving them, free rental or license of Maxxie, digital license or whatever. So it's all good.
No, that's great. That was really fantastic. Do you feel as though by this point you're a good fundraiser?
Um, that is a good question. I maybe, but all right. So the short answer is I don't feel confident in that. But I have friends who I've been able to help turn them to other projects. There is a very generous friend of mine who's done very well in technology, and I'd gotten an appeal campaign from an email via email for a film in San Francisco that needed some additional funding for post-production, and it was LGBTQ themed, and my friend is in the community. And so I forwarded it to him and said, "Hey, if you're feeling generous, they could use a few $1,000." And so he met their gap, which was incredibly generous. And then I have some other friends who are taking their short film and turning it into a feature. And so we've been having a number of conversations about fundraising ideas, and they've been able to activate a few of those ideas. And they're really super well integrated into their community. They've got tons of great friends. And so they've been able to get some financing that way too. So I'd say I'm not good, but I can at least bring some value and help friends out a little bit. So that's good.
Yeah, so you've not only raised money for your own film, but you've been able to raise money for other films, which is fantastic. No, you're a very good fundraiser, Anthony. Um,
Thank you for
and
that.
people who signed the contract this week, I think you said, are they investing for finishing funds, or is that more for marketing distribution that they're supporting you?
I would say that it's not necessarily earmarked in a specific way, but we're finishing at post. There are some final expenses I've got to take care of, and then there are a few things I want to do to move forward. So, for example, I'm using some local talent here in San Jose. Every time in the film Maxxie says her name, an invisible chorus sings out Maxxie LaWow. And so I'm using some friends of mine who are talented vocalists to do that. And so I have to do like a SAG conversion and pay them for that to reuse their vocals, I believe. And I want to create some dance remixes because I think the music in Maxxie is incredible, and I'd like to see it on dance floors, and I'd like to see people, bopping their booty around the world to to our music. And I think it's also kind of also a marketing tool for us. And so yeah, so there are a few things like that, and then we do have some marketing expenses coming up, so that's incredibly helpful.
Yes, yes. And so now you're at the point where, so you just had your premiere. What was the event that was at?
Cinema Diverse, the LGBTQ plus film festival in Palm Springs.
Right. And then you're coming to Miami any day now.
We'll be there the last weekend in October. I believe it's the 27th is the screening. I'll have to look for sure, but
Yeah, you have to send me the actual link because you just told me when you got the news the other day. And so you're officially in your festival run. And so what will happen next with Maxxie after you've been bopping around the country at festivals?
yeah, so we have 5 film festivals confirmed through the end of October and a lot more pending through April of next year. I don't envision Maxi staying in film festivals beyond April. And I met with a distributor at Cinema Diverse who happened to be there, and we had a lovely conversation after one of the films. And I had mentioned that I'd like to see Maxi in market by like June, possibly, or September, like in this time frame next summer for sure. And so we started talking about how if we want Maxi to be, let's say if we don't go to theater, or even if we let's say we don't go to theater, then how do we get in the broadcast slates for big streamers like Paramount Plus or whatever for June Pride Month, because June is the whole month is celebrating Pride, and they're kind of making their decisions this quarter, so we need that representation to be in front of those for those kinds of deals, and I hadn't thought of that until that conversation. But I knew that, like, let's say we wanted to be in theaters or whatever by June. I knew that we needed to start preparations come January. So I'd already been planning on amping up the social media presence, and doing a little bit of like video blogging, that kind of thing, like things like that. So that stuff was kind of in the works, but all of a sudden, figuring out maybe a distribution deal is coming a little bit more urgent, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent timing. And this is part of when I said that I think filmmakers are never prepared for post-production. And I also mean, and then delivery, that,
Mm.
you know, I'm like last year, I was like, I've got 4 films coming. I they're still not out. You know, they're
Oh,
still not out because people sort of wait for the festival process to be over, and then they're like, oh, what about distribution? But I think you're right to be thinking about it earlier. And I know that there's one company that's very interested in representing your
they're very
film.
interested.
So exciting.
We'll see.
We'll see. I'm sure that they're not the only ones, because we have other people to talk to. But yeah, that's I think you're really right to be thinking about that now. You've got your festival run going, and you know, so what's going to happen after Maxxie? What are you going to do next?
Oh my God. Uh, people are already asking me about what's next, and I'd heard that that happens, but now they're doing it. I'm like, oh
And
crap, now I guess I better have an
and
answer.
me being wicked.
Well, one thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see if there's a possibility to get Maxi produced as a series. And in that case, I'd probably be a little bit more hands-off, but I have prepared, a, half dozen potential storylines. So to be prepared in case anyone invites us in for some presentations. And I have 3 other feature ideas, and I'm thinking that I should probably finish my treatment. I have a treatment finished for one of them, and that's kind of ready to go. But I'm thinking that this other one might be more fun to do as like a short, so I need to finish that treatment for that as well. And then I might be calling up Michael again. Hey.
Have you, are you going to be staying in the animation lane?
For these 3 other film projects, probably not. But Maxi as a series, I think, would be perfect as animated. I would love to just do a little bit more animation work too. And so, for example, I was connected with Luke, who is the creator director of the documentary for Lady Camden, one of RuPaul's Drag Race, like a runner-up for, I forget which season now, season 12 perhaps. And Lady Camden, I love Lady Camden. She is so talented, so just an amazing human being. And the documentary is fantastic. And so Luke asked for some assistance in producing like there's like a series of 3 little short vignettes, animated vignettes within the film that tell the story of what RuPaul's Drag Race is for folks who aren't obsessive watchers like me. I forget that not everyone's quite as familiar with the whole concept as I am. And it turned out fantastic. It's really, really good. The whole documentary is fantastic. And then those 3 little animated segments were amazing. So yeah, I would love to keep doing that. Oh, and I should mention that one of the animators from Maxi, who's been with us from the beginning, his name is Michael Derry, and he used to have a comic series a long time ago that was syndicated in a boatload of papers around the world called Troy. And he did a short animated film based on those characters. And he's currently working on a new project about called Frankie's Place, and it's about a monster bar in West Hollywood. And I'll be helping him produce that project. I'm really excited about that.
Fantastic. I just wanted to, I feel as though I sort of skipped some things that I had wanted to ask you about production, because as you went through this process, there were so many huge learning curves,
Yeah.
you went through. And I think the first one was recording all of the dialogue.
Oh, yes.
Or was it did the songs come first or the dialogue?
Dialogue.
The dialogue came first, right? That
We
was
recorded the dialogue right after the Indiegogo. And so those funds were used exactly for paying the actors.
right. So you cast everybody right then.
The most fortunate thing, one of the most fortunate thing, all right, in earlier conversations, I'd use the word luck, and you encouraged me not to use the word luck, which is probably accurate. But I was introduced, I realized that I needed to have a voiceover director, someone who was familiar with how to direct actors in doing these voiceover recordings, and getting the kind, because you have to emote in a very special way for animation versus live action in a little different way. And so there are many actors which do great jobs for specifically for voiceover for animation and gaming and everything. And so someone had introduced me to JP Karliak, and I'm very glad to say I was able to convince him to come aboard for the project. And JP is probably one of the busiest voiceover actors in Hollywood. He's currently the voice of Boss Baby in Netflix's series. He is the voice of Morph in X-Men '97, which is fantastic. And there's nearly no cartoon I've seen that didn't have his name in the credits. And I am so glad I did, because he was able to lead these voiceover recording sessions. Well, first of all, he helped with casting. And because he's been in all these projects, he was able to really identify, like we had a conversation about what I was looking for each of these actors. He was able to identify a couple of voiceover talent candidates for each role. And we talked about those. And so he led the casting process. And so, for example, one of the people that we cast was Lorraine Newman from the original cast of Saturday Night Live. And Lorraine Newman nowadays is very busy doing voiceover work, and she and JP are friends. And both of Lorraine's kids, I believe, are in the LGBTQ plus community. So she's a wonderful advocate, and she's been so supportive. And we've occasionally texted, throughout the last couple of years, and she's just been beyond lovely. And yeah, so bringing on JP was one of those things where it's like I didn't know I needed a voiceover director until about 10 minutes before I started like madly hunting for a voiceover director, and then I found the perfect voiceover director. Yeah.
Yeah.
And same with music, actually.
I think there've been a lot of those moments on this project. And I think that's got a lot to do with you, because you are so positive all the time. Maybe not 100% of the time, but you can get there. You can keep that positivity going. And there've been so many challenges, but you just keep going and keep
Thank you.
going. And what about the music? So how did you find your singers?
So I
Music, you had to get the music written.
had to get original music. Absolutely. Original music, original score, all original. And, I mean, how many, well, actually, I mean, there are a lot of great songs out there that are great for drag queens, but, I wanted something original and something fun and something a little bit more bespoke for this project. And I had this wonderful opportunity to be on the board of the Silicon Valley Gay Men's Chorus for 2 years during COVID. And this exposed me to more contacts, of course. And one of my friends who had been in the chorus, but then moved to LA, when I put out a call on social media asking who might know songwriters, he said, "Hey, you've got to talk to my friend Dave Volpe, who has done arrangements, who's an original songwriter, composer, has done arrangements for gay men's or queer choruses around the country." And so that's how I got in touch with Dave. And Dave brought in Roman Molino Dunn, also known as Electropoint. And together, wow, what an incredible songwriting duo they are. And Roman has produced a ton of really catchy tunes for drag queens, for TV shows. He's also a composer for TV and film. And they were like Wonder Twin Powers Activate. They were just incredible. So that's how we got our 4 songs. And when we were looking for a vocalist, Dave was leveraging his networks And eventually we settled on Angie Fisher, who is a Grammy-nominated vocalist. And she's incredibly versatile, and every song has this powerful female voice behind it. And it is, I told the boys when we were writing these songs, I'm like, I want drag queens around the world to lip sync to these songs in clubs, and I want them to feel powerful and to have fun. And that's what we delivered. And then we found the right vocalist to carry that through. And then Dave also is a composer, and so he was super excited. He did a great job creating our score digitally first. It was really, really good. But he's like, Anthony, this is so good. I think it would elevate the film if we could get a live symphony to record it. And I'm like, Dave, that sounds expensive, but find a vendor, find an organization that can do it, and pitch me on price and everything. And he came back a few weeks later. He found this wonderful symphony in Budapest that could do it at an affordable rate for us. And we decided to do it and just pull the trigger. And I'm so glad we did. And starting in Q1 in 2025, like in January or so, we'll start releasing some of these videos of the symphony, recording these songs in the score, and it's amazing. Which reminds me, I need to register with ASCAP so we can release our soundtrack,
Oh, yeah.
sometime soon. Yeah, all that too. So yeah, it was, and when I first met with Mark Schwab back in 2021, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know how we're going to get music done. He's like, Anthony, that's a problem that can be solved. Have confidence, we'll figure it out. It's going to work out fine. And it did. And the music is incredible.
It was the thing that made me the most anxious, getting songs written. Emily's going to play the trailer so everybody can get a bit of a sense of what we're talking about.
Good.
And go ahead, Emily.
You are about to embark on a hero's journey. You will do something you never thought you could do. Destiny awaits, and you cannot escape it!
Very funny, Valentina. You can just say take out the trash next time.
Honey, in this house, we're all your friends. What's your name?
I'm Simon.
I'm Mama Moo Moo. This is my place. Every drag performer is unique.
Thank you, I love you boys. The name's Dinah. Dinabolical. Cry, you miserable queens! Igor, showtime.
When you fall in love with you, your star begins to glow. But when you put that love to use, you become a shero. When you fall in love with you, your star begins to glow. But when you put that love to use, you become a shero.
Oh my God. Who are you?
The name's Maxxie LaWow.
Maxxie LaWow!
Girl, I'm a super queen.
Thank you for sharing that, Emily.
I played it on my Bose speakers so I could play it loud. That was so good. It's so tricky with Zoom, but Emily's got it figured out. So thank you, Emily, for that. I wonder if we open it up to questions, if anybody has a question they would like to ask.
Joy, did I answer your question enough about casting or?
Yeah, I think so. But I just wanted to say that I saw your pitch deck last week, I think, and you had, I don't know, that was my favorite pitch deck that I saw out of all of Joanne's. And I think the vision is so clear. And I love, Joanne, what you said about that. I mean, you just understood visually that you had to be able to create this world, and that was, I'm sorry, it's like the dumpster got the trash just came. But yeah, I just think that is just going to carry you all the way through to the end, even on TikTok. You know, you're going to be able to rely on all that imagery, and now you're going to have all these songs to pull from. And so it's just really impressive. And it's cool to hear you talk about not be afraid to share how large your vision has been for this project. You know, that takes a lot of courage, especially when the beginning, when, you know, you're looking for 50,000. What was your original goal for your Kickstarter, or your GoFundMe?
Oh my gosh. Well, my original goal was $50,000. So we just barely made it with 52. I think if I were to do it again, I might have made it like 25 and then been extremely happy by doubling it. But I mean, 52 is still kind of incredible, like how generous my friends and family are.
Oh yeah, no, that's amazing. But you would have done 25 because it was so stressful to reach 50?
Yeah, maybe. I think, well, all right. So not to, this might not put myself in the best light, but I'm thinking like, would it be better to just barely make my goal or to double my goal? Like, which sounds better? I mean, I don't know. And I've been kind of going back and forth on that, but it's kind of a silly moot point, you know, at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was really brave of you to go for the 50. And I wouldn't normally let my clients do that, but I knew you could do it.
Thank you for your confidence.
Well, we looked at it, and I always want my clients to do something that's challenging, but is doable. And you did it, and you know it was hard. You were sweating there to get it done, but it was definitely the right move.
Yeah, and Joanne had a lot of guidance through there. That was really helpful too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And so these two figures that you have on your screen, were they already part of your Kickstarter campaign? Did you already have that imagery?
Cool.
Yes, in fact, this wallpaper is from the very early days, actually, in that first 6-month period. Yeah.
Cool.
It was Indiegogo. Kickstarter.
It was Indiegogo. Okay, yeah. And then what I'm curious about with your casting, so you said you brought on this man who had a little bit more expertise, but did you have actors in mind, or he really just led that whole, you know, he gave you all the direction on that?
I had a couple actors in mind, and I'd reached out to a couple of people privately beforehand with silence, total radio silence. And I probably wasn't doing it in the right way as part of it. And of those two actors I'd reached out to in those early days, when I was still doing it solo, one of them we did bring on for a cameo role later. But you know, one should go through agents or work through, you know, back channels with personal connections, probably most effectively. And so JP was able to really look at each of those roles and identify potentially talented actors. And part of that, honestly, is because JP is co-founder of a nonprofit organization in LA called QueerVox, VOX, QueerVox. And what they do is they train LGBTQ plus actors on how to do voiceovers for animation, gaming, books on tape, whatever they're called nowadays, audiobooks, you know, things like that, commercials. And so a lot of the actors came from that network or people that JP had worked with before. So, you know, when I hired JP, I wasn't just paying an hourly fee, I was also paying for his network and his years of experience knowing like whether people could turn out like a voice that could fit a certain character. And that was certainly beyond my skills, but but we worked together, and I made the ultimate casting decision, yes or no, on any given actor. In fact, there were a couple of somewhat famous people who had, for example, auditioned for the Maxxie and Simon roles, who I would have loved, but we ultimately settled on Grant Hodges because I felt Grant Hodges really embodied that sort of almost like Midwestern, boy next door kind of voice a little bit more for Simon. And also for Maxxie, just really nailed that kind of like, confident, but also not real bright kind of thing that I had in mind for Maxxie.
Okay. Huh, cool. Yeah, I'm totally going to be sharing this with my friends. They will love this. Yeah, I'm working on Dracula that I co-wrote with my friend, and yeah, we've taken an adaptation of the first 4 chapters of Dracula, where Jonathan Harker gets trapped in the castle, and there's so much queer coding. I mean, Bram Stoker, right? He was queer, and so I'm like, you know what? Why don't we fully make this a queer film? And
Yeah.
so I want the brides to be drag queens. Like, and I just really want to lean into that, because it's like,
Oh
give
my
this
gosh, contact me
back to
offline.
people.
Let me help you. Let me help some way.
Yeah, seriously, that would be amazing. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love that story, and I love this section. It's this total survival story, and so yeah, I'll reach out to you for sure.
Yeah,
But
please do.
yeah,
Perfect.
I mean, good job. It's amazing. I'm really, really impressed.
Oh, thank you so much.
Just listening to you talking about working with the voiceover director, I think that this is probably something you draw from your product designer skills, but a lot of confidence with hiring somebody who knows a whole lot more than you do.
Yes.
But also
yes.
confidence in that you're going to get your vision that you want. And I see that a lot with your work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really tough letting someone else who's really talented kind of take a pass at something. And sometimes it's not exactly right, but I've been able to, like, for the most part, lean back, and like when we were doing all the voiceover recordings, sometimes I wanted it done in a certain way, but I'd let, JP and the actor like do some other takes. And then it's like nothing to let that happen and then do my take and then see ultimately which one worked the best in scene, and sometimes mine worked better and sometimes theirs worked better. Most of the time theirs worked better. So, it was all very elevated, honestly, and exactly what I was looking for. And even there were times when I'm like, we have to go more. We have to go campier and a little bit more over the top. I mean, it's drag queens after all, so. And they did it.
That's right. Sherry, do you have any questions for Anthony before we close up?
Hi, Anthony. I met you in Palm Springs. I saw your premiere. I loved it, loved it, loved it. And you did great on the Q&A. And I've been sending, I have a sister in Seattle. I saw you're going to be there. I told her to go. And I'll definitely send people to Miami too. So I'm thrilled to be a fan now. And my only question really is how you came up with the name, if what inspired the name, because I think it is, when I saw the name in the first brochure, I thought that is so catchy, even before I heard the little echo of Maxxie LaWow. But I just was walking around saying, that's a name that I want to keep saying over and over again. How did you get something so catchy? Maybe it has to do with the product background. I don't know.
Honestly, the name Maxxie LaWow came to me, and I can't explain where it came from. I don't know. And same with Simon, it came to me. I struggled with some of the other names, like Jay had different names originally, and Jay's character is Korean American, so then I did some research on some names that sounded both Korean and American, because the backstory is that Jay's like her parents immigrated from Korea, so that worked out well. And Diabolical had a different name originally, and I was working. One of the projects I'm thinking of doing next is a live action version of a drag queen story hour kind of rom-com sort of, and And so I was working with an actor on that one. Oh, one of Miranda Dawn's cohort of professional colleagues, and he had a great idea for Diabolical that was. He had that idea for Diabolical that was much better than the original name I had for her. So that's how we ended up with Diabolical. So yeah, so some clever contributions along the way, as well as rethinks here and there. So yeah, that's how we kind of got with the names.
Well, congratulations for your stellar start. It's really just been very fun to watch.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much for coming.
Lovely to meet you. A fan. Look at that.
It's true.
We have a fan. That's awesome.
Well, this project, if I can just say this real quick, one thing that's been really amazing about Maxxie is kind of like the doors it's opening already. And I have been fortunate enough to help on Ladylike a little bit, and Stand Behavior, a short film with Ginger Minge, which opened for Maxxie at Cinema Diverse, and some other projects. And that's how I got to be working with Vita May and Brian Hewitt, who are working on Sage, the feature, because her short film is just freaking brilliant about a gender non-binary kid, and I just am so fortunate, and I love being able to support these projects, see them come to light, and I can't wait to see what else comes next, honestly.
Yeah, it's like you've built your community and built it, and it's fantastic to watch. It really is fantastic to watch.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us today, and I will be seeing you very shortly here in Miami. I can't wait. Oh my God, I'm seeing it on the big screen with the symphony and everything in there. It's going to be fantastic.
We just completed a new stereo mix optimized for theater, so I'm hoping that we can get the DCP updated for that one.
Nice. Yeah, and we put you in the newsletter. What did we put in the newsletter, Emily? It just went out yesterday, our newsletter, and we included something.
We did say that it's going to be screened in Miami, and we gave the link to the website so people can get tickets if they're in the area that read the newsletter. So, and then we will be putting another thing, Proud of My Clients, out, I think the Wednesday before the screening. So that will have another link for the screening as well.
Well, now I have the link. I have a ton of people to be inviting. So.
Yeah, please bring them all out. We got a theater to fill.
That's right. That's right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This was so much fun, Anthony. It's always such a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye, everybody. Happy filmmaking.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily.